For most of Rome's history, there was a law about carts. You were not allowed to drive one through the city, not at night. During the day, from sunrise until late afternoon, wheeled traffic was banned. The law is called the Lex Julia Municipalis, 45 BC, which does something strange to the city you are imagining, because it means the deliveries happened after dark. All of them. Every night. For 1 million people. Stone streets. Iron-rimmed wheels. Narrow walls on both sides. The poet Juvenal complained he could not sleep. He said only the very rich in Rome ever slept properly, because they owned enough space to be far from the street. Hold that thought. It comes back later, because we are going to put you in this city for 1 day, 24 hours. That is the whole test. And you already have a theory about what kills you. Everybody does. And everybody is wrong. So let's take your theory apart first. Then we can talk about what actually happens to you. It is much more boring and much harder to survive. First guess. Gladiators. Games were spectacular, expensive, and rare. A Roman could go years without seeing one, and you are not in the arena. You are in the crowd. Second guess. Plague. Rome had terrible epidemics. They lasted months. You are here for 1 day. Statistically, nothing. Third guess. Someone stabs you for being a foreigner. Rome was full of foreigners. It ran on them. Nobody would look at you twice. And that is the first real clue. Not being noticed is not safety here. It is the thing that kills you. But we will get there properly. Start with the most ordinary problem you have. You are thirsty. Rome had 11 aqueducts. They delivered enormous volumes of water into the city every day. This is genuinely one of the great engineering achievements in history, and almost none of it reaches where you are standing. Because water arrives by gravity. Gravity does not carry it up a staircase. Public fountains were at street level. Wealthy houses paid for a private pipe. Everyone else carried it upstairs in a jar. Which is the moment to look at where you live. The Roman apartment block. The insula. 5, 6, sometimes 7 floors of brick and timber. Augustus had to cap the height by law, which tells you they were being built taller than that. And here is the part everyone gets backwards. The ground floor was the expensive one. Water, light, space, a door to the street. The higher you went, the cheaper and worse it got. You are on the top floor. Obviously, no running water, no drain, no latrine. What you have is a pot and a window. Roman law had a specific rule for things thrown from buildings. Laws exist because of what people were already doing. Now the thing that made Rome genuinely dangerous. Fire. Not one famous fire. Fire as a constant background condition. Timber floors. Timber balconies. Oil lamps. Open braziers. Packed against each other with almost no gaps. Augustus eventually built a fire service. The Vigiles. 7 cohorts. Thousands of men. Patrolling at night. Which is a serious institution, and it still was not enough. Before that, fire was a business opportunity. Crassus kept a private crew of 500. They would arrive at a burning building and wait, while Crassus negotiated the price with the owner. He became one of the richest men in Roman history. Now put yourself back on the top floor. There is one staircase. It is wooden. It is below you. Fire moves upward. And this is why the cheap floors were the deadly floors, which is a pattern you should file away. In Rome, the cost of everything was paid in risk. Cheaper rent meant a worse chance of getting out. But let's say the building does not burn tonight. You still have a much more immediate problem. You cannot cook, not because you lack skill, because there is no kitchen. Open flame on a wooden upper floor is how buildings die. So most Romans ate out. Constantly. The thermopolium, a counter with sunken jars of hot food. Pompeii alone has around 150 of them, which is a functioning fast food economy in the 1st century. And every one of them wants money, which you do not have. So you think about the grain dole. Rome did distribute free grain. The annona. Around 200,000 people received it. It is genuinely one of the first large welfare systems. And you cannot have any, because the dole was not for the hungry. It was for citizens, adult males, on a list. And you proved you were on the list with a token, a tessera. A small piece of metal or bone with your entitlement on it. No tessera, no grain, no argument. And notice what has just happened. For the first time, the thing stopping you is not physical. It is a record. The sun goes down. This is where the day gets serious. Rome had no street lighting. None. Not a single lamp maintained for public use. On a moonless night, the streets were genuinely black. And remember what is happening in those streets after dark. Every delivery cart in the city, all at once. The wealthy did go out at night, preceded by slaves carrying torches, and followed by more slaves carrying nothing in particular, which is a polite way to describe bodyguards. Light and protection were the same purchase. Juvenal describes being stopped in the dark, and the detail he chooses is not the violence. It is that afterwards, there is nothing you can do. No police force existed in the sense you mean. Roman law was overwhelmingly a private matter. You brought your own case. You found your own witnesses. You needed someone respectable to speak for you, and that person had to have a reason to, which brings us to the actual answer. Roman society ran on a relationship with a name. Patronus and clients. Patron and client. It was not friendship and it was not employment. It was a formal, public, inherited obligation. Every morning, clients went to their patron's house. This was called the salutatio, the greeting. You stood in the atrium. You were seen. You were counted. And often you left with a small payment or a basket of food. The sportula, which sounds humiliating, and it was also everything. Because in exchange, the patron owed you as well. Legal support if you were accused. A loan if you were desperate. An introduction if you needed work. A name to give when someone asked who you were. That last one is the whole video. Because you have arrived in Rome with no patron, which means no legal standing, no credit, no work, no grain token, and no one who is obliged to notice. And Rome is not a village. Nobody is going to ask. In a small settlement, a stranger is an event. Somebody investigates. Somebody feeds you. Not out of kindness. Because an unexplained stranger is a risk. Rome had too many strangers for that to work. So Rome did something no city had needed to do before. It replaced knowing you with recording you. Census rolls, citizen lists, grain registers, tokens, seals, witnesses, written contracts. A whole apparatus for answering one question. Who is this person, and does anyone vouch for them? And that apparatus is why Rome could exist at all. 1 million people in one place is not natural. Nothing had ever done that before. And here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Rome killed more people than it produced. Deaths in the city consistently outran births. Disease, crowding, bad water, bad air. The population held only because people kept arriving. From the countryside. From the provinces. Constantly. Which means Rome was full of people exactly like you. New. Unknown. Holding nothing but their own account of themselves. Most of them did not make it into any record we have. Not because they died dramatically, because there was no reason to write them down. So your 24 hours, in the way theirs did. Not stabbed. Not eaten by a lion. Sitting against a wall, unfed, in the dark, in the largest city on earth, with 1 million people within walking distance, and not one of them owing you anything. Now step back and look at what we actually described. Every single thing that defeated you was infrastructure. Water that stops at the ground floor. A staircase that only goes one way when it burns. A meal you can only buy, never make. A list you are not on. A door you have no reason to knock at. None of that is about being weak. A Roman dropped into your city would fail exactly as fast. Because he would be missing the same thing you are. Not strength. Not knowledge. Not courage. A position inside a system that already knows he exists. And here is the uncomfortable part. You have one. You have never seen it. A number that says you are a citizen. A record that says you can be lent money. An address that says where letters find you. Every one of those is a tessera. The same object, 2,000 years later. Rome did not invent the crowd by accident. It invented the paperwork because the crowd required it. Every city since has been a copy of that solution, including the one outside your window. You would not have died in Rome because Rome was brutal. You would have died because you were nobody in particular. And the only reason you are not nobody today is that somebody, somewhere, wrote your name down.